Hey there, Goa fans. This is Mark, DJ Solitaire, here with episode 126 of Retro Goa Explorations, my weekly series in which I present in each episode one of my favorite tracks from the 1990s Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement. So, this is a track I am super excited to be featuring. I remember certainly when I got my hands on the physical copies and in a specific format that I'll be sharing details about. And and it was the B side to a much more, I think, widely received A side. I think this one has not received the publicity that it should or the airtime, but it is the one of those two tracks that I generally feature. Now, I've had this project on here before, and I've got some background stories about how the music was made, the title, and also what I'm going to start with is again how it found its way into my hands. So I've talked about Crop Circles before. This incredible project that was six wild and crazy Italian guys, the four from Etnica and the two from Lotus Omega. And so they produced an incredible single on Oracle called Full Mental Jackpot, which was the first track that I featured. And then I also included the alternate mix, this gorgeous, sensual remix of that. Now, that made its way onto several compilations, but it was a bonus track on a CD single for the second Oracle single release of the Crop Circles, which was this gorgeous, gorgeous cover. I mean, absolutely amazing. It's both retro and futuristic, Lunar Civilization. And that track got a lot of play. That was the one that I remembered Tsuyoshi playing several times. So I remember hearing that one, even though I got the remix, probably closer towards, the end of the summer of 97. I remember Tsuyoshi later in 97. I remember specifically being at the Brixton Academy and him playing this one. How I remember these things anyway. But I remember I obviously had it at that point as well. I'm not sure that it had the vinyl. This might have been another one of those cases where I was over at Richard Purple's place and copied his vinyl or whatever. But Oracle Recordings was run by this fellow named Tom King. And he and I also played at this party that I think, we were playing all just basically for each other on some farm. And he played, I remember he played the new Jojoka track, the first one ever that came out on the Sacred Sites Return to the Source compilation. So, he had hooked up with Tsuyoshi, and Tsuyoshi obviously had, this Lunar Civilizations track and loved it and played it as he, did. And before I left the UK in February 98, I somehow found myself in Tom King's apartment, not far from the Twisted HQ. And he was preparing promo cassettes of the Crop Circles album that was due to be released. I did not get one of those, but he very generously gave me several copies of this Crop Circles CD single, which has that Full Mental Jackpot remix as the bonus track, which is not on the vinyl. I've got it on CD. So got my hands on this, few copies. He asked me to, give them around and, to other DJs and maybe, any shops in Japan, which I did. Still ended up with a couple of copies, myself. I kept one on reserve and had the one that I was using. And this has always been an absolute favorite. Now, here's the thing. So Lunar Civilization, when I say it's been a favorite, Lunar Civilization wasn't my favorite. It was the B-side, Antonomasia. This one for me is just one of the most gobsmacking, unbelievable cyber electro frenetic tracks out there. Has a really unique vibe, super mystical, intense, but warm in a weird way. I mean, it's just this real blend, as I've talked about, this music in our scene has a blend of qualities and a blend of emotions that really, I think, encapsulates the complexity of being a human being and living in this, whatever the time that we're in. And certainly at that time, we were feeling this, this movement. This dance movement was part of us breaking free of some of the cultural and social and historical hypnosis. And so I immediately took to Antonomasia, and that became my go-to track of the two main tracks here. Of course, the Lunar Jackpot remix, the Jackpot, Full Mental Jackpot remix was, another major go-to and completely different vibe. But I've got some fantastic background into the track from Maori of Ethnica and crop circles, as well as Federico Rossi, who did a lot of research into the project before he ended up making the first eventual release of the fabled album of crop circles that had never come out for some reason. And I also mentioned that it was my mentioning having seen the cassette on, it was on some Goa chat group. There was this thing before Facebook, and I was talking about that, and I mentioned, oh no, I'd seen this cassette, and Fede wrote to me, and we started this conversation. I was like, oh yeah, and I've got these CD singles. He's like, you've got those CD singles. So 2004, I ended up going to Milan, met Federico, and I had a spare copy that I gifted him with that, and that is actually was kind of started the formation of Dat Records, now known as Dat Universe. So here we go. So some fantastic background information. First of all, I'll quote Maori. What a crazy tune, really. And it's pretty right on. So he says, the title comes from an inside joke we had with the name Antonio, which we used for a million things. So what they would just do is say Antonio this, Antonio that. Is a little bit like almost if you consider the Smurfs or whatever, where they just replace the word that they're talking about with Antonio. So it's just this inside joke that all of the guys had. And so they would just riff off, using this word. However, Antonomasia actually has a meaning. And in fact, it has two. Now, usually the dictionary definition, this is a pretty cool one, is when a descriptive phrase is used in the place of someone's name. So instead of referring to William Shakespeare, you say the Bard, or the Little Corporal for Napoleon, the Fab Four for the Beatles, the Caped Crusader for Batman, the Boy Who Lived for Harry Potter. Those are all examples of antonomasia. Who knew? But in Italian, it's often used to mean quintessential or par excellence. So this is a Goa track par excellence. This is a quintessential Goa track. So it was kind of this combination riff, where there was this in joke of how they use Antonio, but then they were sort of wanting to have this, quintessential track. And so in any case, it could be because, it was a reference to the fact that they, filled all these tracks with all these, truly Goa elements. And again, I'll reference the fact that, there's no one Goa style, right? But it is a quintessential kind of track. So it's definitely got this. So it was just a little play on words over there, quite literally. So Maori adds, in terms of, the technical side, that several sounds are clipped using the saturation on the gain stage of the Mackie mixer, a trick we mastered on Starship 101, Lunar Civilization History, and others. It's the same as putting a guitar through an amp and cranking the volume. Surely you know this kind of thing from Total Eclipse, this 101 lead type of sound. It gives a great glue to it all, and it's mixed into the very same console. He says basically all of our trademark sounds are there. It's really deep towards the end. You can hear so many layers. There's 5 leads playing together in unison. and that they really wanted to make a powerful nighttime track, as they had done with Full Mental Jackpot, the original. And then he said one of the things that was really a big role in their musical output was what I referred to when I mentioned the first time in Full Mental Jackpot, that the rule was when they were doing the mix down in the studio, everybody had to be on their feet dancing. Kind of cool, huh? Now, again, I've talked about this many times. The energy that the producers had while they were making the music, I think, is embedded in the recording. And nowadays, when people just hit a button and render it, it's really important that they be involved, I think, in the actual creative compositional process. But there isn't the involvement in the actual mix down. Here, there was the compositional process, but then there was also the mix down. And personally, I think you can hear the energy even when there's different versions and different mixes of a certain track. You can often hear that, the difference in the energy between the two, even if the structure is the same or almost the same. So in any case, this one hits all the buttons for me. I played it at ZNA in 2017 and definitely hit some buttons there. And it really gets me going every time I hear it. So it is, again, a real go-to for me, and I'm really excited to feature it today. So without any further blah, 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 let us listen to the gorgeous, powerful, mystical track by Crop Circles, Antonomasia. So this kind of repetition, where you get this riff and this pattern of sound and this wave form that just repeats itself, and which, of course, sounds like a voice. So there was always the thing going on back then that all of these things could sound like some sort of alien speech. And the gorgeous kick comes in. You start hearing some more artifacts. Right? The sort of slight tinniness to the sound. And then there's going to be this very creative pause. Something completely different. Again, more voices. Again, these all sound like voices. It gets closer. It's really like something's approaching. Notice that extra bubbling of excitement there. And then that marching rhythm. Listen to the shaking that's going on in there. Those fantastic syncopated hi-hats. Extra little whoosh in there. And the laser beams. And cyber electric. So again, this sort of exclamatory, but also somewhat, it's like a celebratory but anguished cry from the cosmos. Now that is a distorted version of one of the main melodic elements that we're going to be hearing. Fantastic use of the kick there. Unbelievable. much more going on than I'm able to speak to. So we'll see what I end up talking about. But I love the arpeggiated, this pattern going up and down in these waveforms. Again, brilliant pause. And also the accenting on offbeats. One of the really important elements of some of the riffs and patterns in this track. But wow, I mean, there's interesting drop, and we still have the same riff, but just voiced differently. And again, back to the laser beams. But yeah, I was going to say, that emotional, the anguish, torment, but also, just the need to express something that seems to cry out here. And then that really clever little voice. And then the kick drops out again. Listen to fantastic creative use of percussion here before the monster riff comes in. Unbelievable bass line. And then back. The minor second and major third. And back. And then all of the different effects that are being played out. No break yet, another round. Again, always just get caught in this hypnotic loop. Some other little flavoring going on there. Let's see if it's here. There we go. So now we get that variation coming. It's interesting how it's layered, right? It's a little bit in the background. Because we have the laser beams that are a bit louder, but there's this very important melody going on above. So it gets broken down into parts. So we just got a little bit presented, and now it all comes together. And again, this is that kind of cosmic carnival atmosphere that I've talked about in a lot of these early tracks, as well as that sort of, message being beamed down from outer space, or us beaming out a distress signal to try to get a little cosmic assistance. Again, very interesting drop of all but a few voices. Just sort of, again, like repeating this phrase, it almost gives it the sense of urgency. And this comes in. Right, which had come in after the introductory sort of element of the track. Then we got those arpeggios. Love how the percussion comes back in there. A really important part of the musical information. As well as that one. Very interesting interval here. storyline. And just pay attention to the complexity of it. It's just not boxy at all. Really, this exploration. You know, and the repetition, again, it's really trying to drive home a message. There's a lot of power in each of these riffs and the harmonies that are being expressed. Climbing going on here. You can hear that texture. And again, there's some good old gnarly intensity coming to the fore. This whole other dimension of alien voices. Things are almost starting to fade away. It's like, okay, you got the message, but don't forget, you know, the purpose of this transmission, just as they start to move away. Right, so things start dropping away, but that key line is going to stay. And there's really two beautifully intertwined lines here. I mean, really? I mean, that is just the epitome of cosmic. Or, and if we're talking about quintessential, it's the Antonomasia of cosmic. This is really what it is. This has always, for me, been an absolutely, you know, a clincher of a track, one that's, I think is far too rare, where you get all of the elements really coming together so perfectly. I think a lot of tracks have, you know, aspects of these elements, and this one, it's just the complexity, the layering, the sounds. You know, it was starting to, for me already by this time in 97, 98, starting to move a little too far away from that cosmic celestial, you know, that like the carnival like atmosphere that I've mentioned, but especially, you know, what hit me the first time and several times, you know, regularly throughout my early experiences in Japan from 94 to 96, that cosmic transmission, communion with higher life forms, higher, you know, not necessarily physical, you know, and this beaming down of information. And this one, you know, it was really, a lot of the musical flavoring was moving away from that. And this is like, yeah, this is what it's all about. This is, for me, really captures the heart of what drew me into this musical scene. The complexity, as well as the beauty. You know, there's singable riffs here. And there's a combination of emotions that I think is one of the key factors that's it's really lacking today. You know, by and large, of course, not entirely, but certainly from the mainstream, our scene having a mainstream element within its own bubble. So there we go. I think just an absolute masterpiece of a track by the Crop Circles. So, as you noted, there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot going on. So, as usual, I'm going to present the entire track after I sign off here so they can hear it without my blabbering over it. And give it a good listen. Put on some headphones or crank it up, play loud, as the suggestion often is, and enjoy whatever the transmission is communicating to you. I'm Mark, DJ Solitaire, wrapping up episode 126 of Retro Goa Explorations and leaving you now with Crop Circles and Antonomasia.